Hello, my name is Justin Bright, and welcome to Kerbal Space Program version 1.2.2, in which I am attempting to make Kerbals a multiplanetary species. And at the current moment, I am doing so by meeting up the VTOL bus with Kerbin, our intrepid engineer, with the refueling ship. I've been normally kind of leaving these things out, but this wound up being kind of a funky thing that I had to do where I actually had to send the fuel tanker up from Minmus on a transfer orbit between Minmus and the moon to meet up with the VTOL bus because it did not have the fuel to get to Kerbin and then back to Minmus. So lots of flying around inside the system that I wound up having to do. Which ended up being pretty fun, actually. I really enjoy doing those kind of transfers, and if you need interplanetary system transit practice, doing so between the moon and Minmus is actually a great way to do it, because you still need to worry about phase angles, ejection angles, that whole thing. It's just very low stakes because you're really close to Kerbin and the Delta V budget is very small, and the phases line up really rather frequently. Alright, so speaking of dealing with transfer windows, let's take a look at the Transfer Window Planner mod, which I started using specifically to deal with these transits in between the moon and Minmus. So you may recognize, if you've ever used this, the pork chop plot that comes up here that allows you to see kind of what the transit is going to look like as far as your departure time, your arrival time, and how you actually set up your burn to get between one and the other. And that's relatively simple, and that gives you a really good guideline for how to make these kind of transfers efficiently and minimize the travel time. So what I usually end up doing is I kind of use this as just a guideline rather than a like getting the very specific thing. But what I found out about recently is this button. I don't know when this got added, but it makes me so happy. If you click on the Show Phase Angles button, it actually draws a diagram for you of what the phase angle is and what that looks like in the game. And I can't even tell you how excited I was when I found this out. This is just so incredibly cool. It's great as a learning tool, like I said, because the way that you can actually visualize where you're supposed to be and where you're departing from and where you should be heading to. So it points the green line to where your departing body is supposed to be relative to the blue body, which is the target. So you can see that you're supposed to be near opposition, just a little bit ahead of opposition. So I believe that 95 degrees points to what the angle that your current body needs to travel to be in the correct alignment, and the relative difference between the two bodies. So let's take a look at Duna as well, from Kerbin to Duna. So this is something I'm a little more familiar with. I know you're supposed to be just ahead, and yeah, you're supposed to be ahead by 34.4 degrees, and Duna is supposed to be kind of just behind you at, I'm not sure what that 346.76, I guess that's the angle that it should be at, so it's looks like 16 degrees away from where it is optimally, something like that. So in addition to the phase angles, so the relative directions that you're supposed to be have the bodies lined up in, you can also see these ejection angles, which show how you should be leaving from your current body to actually make the trip to where you're going. So you put this on here, and you can see that you should be leaving at 186.03 degrees to prograde, so that's 186 degrees before you are at the angle of prograde, and it looks kind of like what you see that my current angle is. So this is incredibly cool and a useful tool, and I'm not super experienced with it yet, so please let me know if I got any of this information wrong. I definitely don't want to lead you guys astray as far as that's concerned, but this is really cool, and I'm just finding out about it. Alright, so skipping a bit ahead, you can assume that the refueling operation went fine. I dragged a Kerbal attachment system pipe across and plugged it in and pumped the fuel and sent the fuel tanker back on its way to Minmus, and the VTOL bus is now here at Kerbin, attached with the crew return module, or the crew ascent module that we are using to bring up our the Kerbals that we are going to be bringing to the Minmus Shipyards. So this is a whole complement of, you know, quartermaster and engineers and biologists, farmers, everybody else. So all of those folks that we need to get the Minmus Shipyard up and running, that's them, and they are moving right across. Alright, so now that I've done that, I actually should make sure they have enough supplies to make this trip, because it is about an 8-day journey out to, on the minimum energy transfer out to Minmus. So I've packed plenty of supplies on this, and hopefully that should be enough, although this has not been really enough in the past. When I'm sending up 12 Kerbals at a time, I feel like it gets to be not quite as much supplies as they actually need for the trip, and they end up like just using some of their 15-day starving grace period, which is not ideal. So I think what I'm actually going to do is I'm just going to have Desley jump out, grab his drill, and we are going to go ahead and bring these life support packs over, I think. Yeah, because I have 2 of these return modules in orbit around Kerbin. So you'll actually notice the design on this one in particular is slightly different because I didn't have a heat shield, although I may not have a heat shield on the other ones now that I think about it, because they're just using poodles and they're not terribly heavy or going terribly fast. So it's fine. Everything's fine. I'm going to throw this particular crew module away just so I can keep its the little life support packages, and we'll triple the amount of room for life support that we have on the VTOL bus, because that's something that gets used a lot more often, shuttling people back and forth. Alright, so with that finished, let's get Desley Kerman back on board the VTOL bus and see how we did. And that gives us 3 days. Okay, fine. Maybe not that big of an increase. Alright, moving swiftly along. Now we are back to the Commodity Return Module version 2, where I am trying to drop a 3.75 meter container full of exotic minerals down to the surface of Kerbin for return and, you know, hopefully getting a whole bunch of money. So this is a slightly higher stakes one, and I'm going to do everything that I can, I think, to try to get this thing in and home safe. So I'm going to spend as much fuel as I can. I'm going to empty out the my nuclear tug. I don't think we're going to get quite into like a circular low Kerbin orbit, because I think our periapsis is about 140 kilometers. We're not going to get quite down to 140 of an apoapsis. That's starting to warm up a little bit. That's not good. So we're going to drop that down as low as we can and see what we can do from there, because we want to give us the best shot of getting this thing down to the very precise location that we want it to be to get the most funds. Alright, that is really warming up a lot. I guess I shouldn't have plugged the nuclear engine directly into this big vulnerable globe of hydrogen. Alright, maybe cool off for a second here. Alright, settle down. Time warp for a minute and see if I can't get this to cool off a little bit. I guess it's just pushing out from the radiators. I don't have a ton of fuel left. I only have a couple tens of meters per second in delta V left. I should be able to just finish this off, maybe, I hope. Alright, come on. Easy. Oh, I was looking at the wrong number. I have more fuel left than I thought. Okay. Oh! Oh, shoot. Yeah, that was... Alright, raise your hand if you expected that to happen, because I'm pretty sure everybody except for me expected that to happen. Ah, that was a bad move. And so ends the reign of the nuclear tug. R.I.P. nuclear tug. And that leaves a hot nuclear reactor sitting up in orbit. I'm going to have to do something about that, but we have other things to deal with. First, we need to get this vessel down. All right, we are lined up, I think, such that we are pretty close to right over the, or we will be ending this burn right over the Kerbal Space Center. I'm using the trajectories mod to kind of project where this burn is going to end up. And I think that I'm going to be able to put this... Alright, so let's just keep an eye. You can hardly see the Kerbal Space Center flag icon that I put down. There it is. It's in there. It's hiding underneath the clouds. I wonder if I can make that a different color. I probably should do that just because it's incredibly hard to see here. But anyways, I'm using trajectories, as you can see, to plan out exactly where I want this thing to land. And there, the cross is just below the Kerbal Space Center, so let's burn ourselves a little bit radial. Or normal, not radial. So that we can hopefully get lined up and drop directly on the Kerbal Space Center. That's the idea anyways. Alright. We have no fuel left, so... Yeah, looks like we are hitting just south of the Kerbal Space Center. But anywhere in that vicinity is probably going to be fine. And that is the sound telling us that our engines are done. So I'm going to drop this... all this extra stuff, this lifter stage and the reactor bit. I wanted to make sure that that actually came with me. I know that that decreased my delta V quite a bit, but I wanted to make sure that it all got burned up in the atmosphere and didn't litter space debris everywhere. I'm trying to minimize that as best I can. I say after having left a glowing hot nuclear thruster in orbit. Alright, all the other pieces have fallen away and will be burning up. They generally stay within the physics bubble of the live vessel long enough for them to slow down and smash into the ground and disappear. Which is why I wait to the very last second to actually decouple everything. But this thing is now hurtling down, and it is completely full of exotic minerals, so it's very, very heavy. You'll notice that we are almost 90 tons, so I have a ton of parachutes on here, and according to stage recovery, because stage recovery has a little calculator that you can use that tells you what the terminal velocity of everything will be with all parachutes deployed and stuff, and it uses that. Looks like that's my reactor and everything burning up. Very nice. But yeah, stage recovery tells you exactly what's going to be your final terminal velocity. And it said that this should be fine. So I'm sincerely hoping that that's actually correct. And it looks like we are in the plasma envelope. And you can see the little peninsula of the Kerbal Space Center just below us. And we look like we are actually pretty well pointed. We're pretty well balanced, where this thing is, it's tilted up a little bit. There's all my things being destroyed. That's nice. So we're tilted up a little bit. Looks like we're going to overshoot, which is probably fine. A water landing, I think, is not going to be a big deal for this. But yeah, it looks like it's pretty well balanced. It's coming in nicely. We are shedding speed. Like I said, the plasma envelope is causing a radio blackout, and I have no control, so I cannot hold any particular direction. We're burning off a good half of our heat shield ablator, and we are coming in to our final descent. Looks like we are shedding velocity pretty well here. That's good, that's good. We are not shedding as much velocity as I was hoping. This thing is a big heavy bullet, isn't it? Oh dear. This thing is, in fact, a big heavy bullet. We have control again, which is good. Still can't deploy my parachutes. Any second now, getting close to 300 meters per second. Should be just underneath 300 meters per second. We can deploy our parachutes. Come on. We're getting really low, guys. Come on. Come on. Maybe I can deploy it when it's... Okay, there's no time. There's no time. Deploy the parachutes. Oh, they're just ripping up. No, come on. Ah. Okay. All right, so I reloaded my game because I'm a big old cheater, but that's fine. What I've done is I've launched something to refuel the lander stage of the commodity return vessel. So obviously this design does not work as I had initially planned it, and I'm not 100% sure what to do about that, so I figured putting more boosters on it would probably not hurt. So we sent up this this grabber to basically shove some fuel into it, and then I can flip this thing around and go after that. Oops, bonk. Oh, geez. This just goes to show how dependent I am on the docking alignment indicator. I have no sense of... Oops, wow, I'm way off. Yeah, I have no sense of where exactly I am in space. In 3D space, I should say. Clunk, there we go. So now, once again, ignoring realism, we are going to shove some fuel in through the claw into the tanks here. Because we need this just to work long enough to land is all we really need. And then I can either kick off this lander stage or we'll figure something else out. Yeah, cheating seems to be the word of the day, since I'm going to actually have to use ship manifest to transfer over the LFO. Okay, so with that done, we have just a tiny bit of fuel left, but I don't actually need a lot to get this thing out of orbit and down to the surface, because we are just planning on smashing this into the surface. And we want to take this nuclear engine with us. I do not want to leave this thing in orbit. That is very dangerous. There's some bits of debris that we've left up in orbit, and I'm probably not going to send up catcher missions for every single one, but this seemed thematically appropriate that we should get this thing down and out. All right, so flip this thing around to face orbital retrograde. Make sure we are pointing in the right direction because we do not have a whole lot of fuel. And shoom, oh, it's so wiggly. Oh, it's wiggly. But we don't have to go far. We are at 10 kilometers, so that'll do just fine. All right, so take two, if you will forgive me, of returning the commodity return vehicle version 2, which worked about as badly as version 1 did. Because version 1, if you recall, I had to use stage recovery to cheat that one to the surface, so I'm thinking for any future versions, I'm going to have to go for a powered landing of some sort, because relying on parachutes and relying on things to, you know, get down to a safe parachute velocity doesn't seem to be working out for me. Although maybe I should be using drogues. I think that might be the thing that I'm missing here, because I think drogue chutes have a higher safe velocity. They might be like a little bit transonic, hypersonic, that allows them to be used at higher velocities so that they can slow you down enough to open your regular chutes. I mean, that's generally what drogues are used for in real life, so I can only hope that that's how they work here in Kerbal Space Program as well. So that might be the application that I use for them. I've never found a use for them outside of that. But all right, we are now coming in much the same way as last time. I'm going to be discarding this stuff in orbit or in the atmosphere so that I can make sure that it burns up. I want to make sure this nuclear reactor gets trashed inside the atmosphere, as well as all the little decoupler debris and that sort of thing. And I'm kind of counting on my swivel engines here to take the brunt of the heating as we re-enter over Kerbin. And we are just now heading in over the grasslands and the mountains to the west, and we are overshooting again, and everything is cooking vigorously. Oh geez, I better actually slow down my time warp. I don't want that to cause any any math problems that end up cooking some of my pieces here, because if any of these engines or tanks burn off, then I'm going to become wildly unbalanced, and it'll probably be okay, maybe. I might be able to recover that, but I'm not 100% sure. But looks like we are slowing down to about under 1,000 meters per second, so let's actually start pushing ourselves retro-propulsively. Well, maybe not too much. We still have some natural slowing that we can do, and I don't want to use up all my fuel. I only have about 185 meters per second left of delta V. I kind of want to kick off this heat shield, but I don't want it to just smash its way through the stack. Alright, so now we are back to that place where we were before. 3 kilometers, 300 meters per second. Let's fire the engines. Jettison the heat shield. Slow down, slow down, slow down. Okay, flip this around so that I can fire the parachutes. Oh, whole lot of G's, but we have done it. All right. And we're slowed down to 4 meters per second. And slowly, slowly drift this into the water. And I actually get to keep that upper stage. Very nice. Just use that to ease this into the water just west of the Kerbal Space Center. And recover. Alright, so here's what we've been waiting for. 5 science, that's nice, from the surface of Minmus, that's exciting. And now let's go to funds, 4.267 million at 97.1% recovery value. We got 4.19 million funds from the exotic minerals themselves. Alright, so I think we have a method here. We're going to have to redesign stuff, but I think this should work out just fine for us to make some money. Alright, so one last thing, we will actually put the VTOL bus down on the surface of Minmus at the new base. So once again, it was all very, very simple, very uneventful trip out here. They are a little bit hungry. They haven't had their snacks in a few days of this journey, but they should be able to set up this base and get food production working here pretty quickly, I think. So, alright, we are just coming down. I'm just trying to make sure that we are coming down directly at the, towards our target so that there's not a whole lot of running back and forth. I think what I'm actually going to do is I'm just going to run like a CAS pipe or something over to the base to allow me to move people over with ship manifest rather than try to do this with my just one at a time by EVA, because that's just a pain in the butt. But yeah, so here we are just coming down, and after this we'll be able to get the base set up and start running the converters and everything else. So very exciting stuff coming up for the base, because this should be just about it as far as I can tell. We have everything we need, just shy of, you know, do-it-yourself kits to actually start building and creating stuff out of this base. Alright, don't land directly on the base, please. That would not be good. I want to be close, but not that close. But yeah, right by the undeployed agricultural stuff I think will work just fine. Alright, and as we come in for our final approach, I think that's actually all the time I am going to have. So let me know down in the comments below what you thought of this one. Please leave me a like, share, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next episode. Coming down, coming down. Almost there. Almost. Okay, we're landed. I'll see you next time.